I think I just pushed that.
Hey, Chef.
Hey there, peoples. Let me turn this up so I can hear. Huh? Oh, no, this is going to be annoying. Okay, give me a second. Now I think I can hear better. Ta-da. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? The Verizon commercial continues. Sequel. Okay, I got 5:30. Let's jump in. Okay, see how well we do. One moment, let me share this so everybody can see. You should be, boom, you can see it now? Can you see it now? Okay. So I just pulled two pictures of plates for us to look at. But before we look at plates, okay, I want to look at one picture from a mise en place from this past week. And I want us all to have just a little reminder, maybe a little discussion about mise en place. And I know that you are working on your own in your own kitchen, and sometimes we get there's a certain feel about being in a commercial kitchen and the need to be safe and sanitary, considering food safety, cross-contamination and things like that. Sometimes we get a little, I hate to use lazy as the word, but I can't think of anything else right now. Sometimes we do get a little lax, maybe when we're working in the comfort of our own home. And anyway, I guess that's kind of a setup for, let's go to this right here. Now, let me preface this by saying one thing. Okay. Well, let me say a couple things. First of all, I think whose picture this is, hopefully already looked at some feedback that I gave. But let's acknowledge, for the good of the whole order, that I do ask for kind of one mise en place picture of everything cut and sliced and diced and weighed and measured. I'm asking for one picture. And so we do our best to set all that up in the frame of one camera shot. But I want us, even when we do that, to pay attention to cross-contamination and the very best, putting our best foot forward, the best examples of mise en place. And so for the good of everybody, just like we learned, or just like we started to do this past week, if you are the sous chef, what's good? What do you appreciate? What's the success of this mise en place? And is there something that you would suggest be different? On your mark, you say go.
I'll definitely suggest the meat
either being on a separate cutting board, or at least on at least have the dry, the herbs and the other materials off to the side somewhere, where the meat just on this board by itself.
Okay. Terrence, good. Anybody else?
I agree. The meat maybe should have been on a plate, or the green beans maybe in a bowl as well.
Okay. San, thanks. Anybody else?
I think all the ingredients are portioned, like they should be. So, I mean, that's a positive there, that everything is, looks like it's ready to go.
Kathy, thank you for that. Especially that, sometimes, especially in our world, and maybe this is something I want to try to change just a little bit for future generations. We are really quick, and sometimes we're really good about pointing out what should be different, or change this or change that. I really do appreciate when we can also observe and articulate what is successful. On the one hand, so I'm just going to go jump right in. I agree with all the comments that have been made. So with Kathy's comment, on the one hand, this is a very good example of mise en place. The onions are already cooked, are cut. The shallots are already cut. Everything is weighed and measured. And now when this person is ready to cook, he or she is simply going to assemble at the right stage, at the right step. That is proper mise en place. When we're cooking and we magnify this times, okay, I'll use this as an example. In a previous employment, I was the executive chef at UCA. Lunchtime service during the regular academic year, lunch service in residential dining, i.e. the cafeteria, during a weekday was for 5,000 to 7,000 people every day. And so the success of food preparation from the kitchen is not exclusively, but almost our success, our timeliness of service is largely due to the few hours of prep that we do leading up to actually cooking for service. This is true for any restaurant. This is true for any caterer, especially if you batch cook or if you cook to order. You live and die by your prep, and you can't just gather 20 pounds of onions and put them in a basket and set them off to the side in your station. You're actually not ready to cook yet. You've got oil burning up. You've got butter burning up in the pan before you use it. If you're heating that up because that's first step in the recipe, but you didn't cut your onions yet. And good, swift, easy, effective cooking happens when we mise properly. So great observation, Kathy. Very, very good. Here, everything is cut and chopped and weighed and measured, and now we're ready to assemble. On the other hand, on the other side of that same coin, as has already been observed, and I do again want to acknowledge this is a staged picture, but I wanted to use it just as a talking point as we move forward tonight, from tonight forward. Let's be mindful, even in these mise pictures that we're taking for every lab the rest of this semester. what you did this past week, 5 artifacts or 5 specific assignments around each lab, your drawing, your mise, your final plate presentation, your plate presentation in uniform, and a little description of your taste experience. That's your lab assignment for the rest of the semester. We've built up to this, and now this is it the rest of the semester. We don't have to present that picture all on a single cutting board. Think of every single picture you take is going to go to the American Culinary Federation. It may be seen someday down the road in the future a little bit, i.e. an accreditation visit. And is this what we're seeing right now? Is it best practice? It's a staged picture. Okay, fine. We understand that. But would anyone unattached, any professional unattached from our class and what we talk about each week, would we look at this picture and say, this is good sanitation? I think we would all agree that the pork is really close to the green beans on the same board, and it may have been dabbed dry, but we don't see all the little cooties that travel away from protein to produce and blah blah blah. So going forward, let's be mindful of that for these mise pictures. For the good of the group and the good of the order, I think the student whose picture this is did not get a point deduction or anything like that, but I'm going to take advantage of any teachable opportunity that I possibly can, and so this was one. I didn't have my chat open. The rest of you might have. Oh, okay. Andy, I hope the computer issues are much improved. We all have that. That's let me just say this. This is a rabbit hole, but there is some concern with, I think I've mentioned this. I don't know if I mentioned this in this class. I know I mentioned it in Meat and Seafood last week. There is concern with our accrediting organization, the American Culinary Federation, with online pastry and culinary labs. There's not a concern about taking online restaurant industry, online intro to hospitality, those lecture classes that we have. There is a little concern about lab classes. And so we were asked to I can continue with Food 1 and Food 2 next semester because it's part of my doctoral research, but this is the last semester for Meat and Seafood. We are putting together Baking 1, stock soups and sauces, and garde manger. We've been asked to kind of suspend that, but let's see, San, you were part of that Meat and Seafood class last week, so you heard this for the second time, but I have an update. I kind of started stirring the pot with the American Culinary Federation, and we had a little exchange over the weekend, and now I have a in-person Zoom meeting with the ACF. I'll be in my office. They'll be in St. Augustine, Florida. And we're going to have a little heart to heart, maybe a little come to Jesus meeting about online learning and what we're actually doing. And so maybe we'll be able to lift that suspension and continue to go forward with a few things. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, update of what's going on. And I'll return you now to our regularly scheduled program. So, Okay, I've got two other pictures. These are plates. These are your work. Just pick two plates. Again, I'd like to hear from the Peanut Gallery about successes and suggestions, should you have any. And so move forward. All right. On your mark, set, go. I'll give you time to ponder.
From the picture of the tenderloin, it definitely looks very scrumptious. Just looking at it, especially in the crust on the outside of the tenderloin, is definitely getting my fat boy senses to tingling.
Whee! Uh-huh.
I like how they did the little smear of, I don't know that that's the proper term, but the sauce. I think that
The
looks
sauce.
really pretty. And my green beans look good.
A couple of you, maybe two or three of you reported, and I'll report back. I did clarify with our product ID, our purchasing department, the green beans y'all got had been in the freezer, and so I asked that we kind of not do that again. We can buy fresh green beans, and if we need to do a different vegetable, I expressed that one of the things you're learning is to adjust and adapt in the moment. And if the recipes that I give you, if the menu for the week calls for green beans, but you get a pile of fava beans, or you get some broccoli or something else, 95% of the time we can still execute the same method with different vegetables and still come out with a nice looking plate. We have to do that in the business all the time. Trucks short us, we forgot to order something, or product is just subpar. It is a great trick, especially for bulk cooking. Buying green beans, for example, frozen green beans, IQF, individually quick frozen green beans, allowing them to thaw. I usually would do that under cold water for 15 or 20 minutes, just till they're tender, and then drain, and they're ready to saute. But to do that right away, it is from frozen to thaw, you end up with essentially the same quality as fresh blanched. And when you pull those green beans, with green beans, this works pretty well. This doesn't always work with every vegetable. What happens when these are frozen, what happens when it's frozen is, at a cellular level, the water inside each cell, when water freezes, it expands, and the water, as it freezes, it expands and it breaks the cell walls on the outside. When it thaws, that's what gives you mushy strawberries. That's what gives you mushy broccoli, cauliflower that's really soft, carrots that can mush real easily. It comes from what happens when that vegetable or fruit goes from fresh to frozen, not from frozen to thawed. Those cells break as they freeze. Andy, you had a question. Did I answer already, or?
So were we supposed to sous vide the green beans?
I think the recipe I gave you was for a sous vide green bean, but I think no, it didn't matter. It really didn't matter. So
because mine ended up being mush by the time that they were sous vide, and I had to go to Plan B.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that. There's this great argument that I like to make against especially things in a can. As much as you can avoid canned food, and I'm not talking about the sodium and preservatives and all of that, but even high quality. Take a green bean. Green beans are picked out of the field. They're washed. They're put in cans, usually raw. And after they've been washed, they go in the can, and then the brine that's used for canning is boiling hot. That brine goes in the can, and it cooks the green beans in the can. The can is sealed. The can then goes through a high temperature canning process for food safety. The beans are cooked again. Labels are put on. They go in the boxes. They're shipped to the stores. You buy it. You take it home. And what do you do with those green beans or whatever was in the can? What do you do again? I grew up I'm a textural eater. No, they're gray, they're nasty, they're mush. So these green beans, since they were pulled from the freezer, like I said, they essentially went through the blanch process, more or less. They got really, really soft. They continued to set. When you picked them up, they were already about the consistency or quality of a canned green bean, as if they had already been cooked. And then if others like you, Andy, had sous vide the green beans, did anybody else have that same experience? Stan, you did? Did you roll with it, or did you just get some other green beans or some other vegetable? I don't remember.
I roll with mine.
Okay. For future reference, I would say 80% of food production 2, in the same way that food production 1 was about knife skills, about 80% of food production 2 is about cooking methods. And what we primarily focus on are protein methods. And so, this past week, we learned risotto method, which is a way to handle rice and grains. We've learned the pilaf method. We'll practice that again. That's something that can be done with so many other grains. We learned to blanch, and we do that so many times. We're going to steam. When we steam, that's a 1-pot dish we're going to do. And you're going to steam vegetables. You're going to steam fish. You're going to make a little bit of sauce all in one vessel. And you'll do some rice. I think that's another pilaf time. You'll do rice on the side. And so I am not at all and never opposed to you looking at the recipes for the week, and you throw it out if you want to, with the exception of if it's sous vide week. Next week is grill week. You're gonna pick up some delicious ribeye from the school to grill a ribeye. At the end of today, we're going to talk about San, not the ribeye that you picked up last week for meat and seafood. For this class, you're going to pick up some ribeye that's already just a single steak. All right.
That's what they gave me today.
Yes. That's for this week's.
Okay, good.
One we're in right now.
That's what I picked up today.
Okay. we're going down several rabbit holes, and let's digress just a little bit and come back to this image that you see. Are there any other comments or suggestions that anybody wants to make about this before we move on?
I like the spacing. There's, I like there's not like a whole big negative space at all. I like the way it's set up. It looks good.
Based on this that you see, would anyone suggest something different? I'm not talking about a completely different plate, but could this plating concept be overhauled in any way to be more attractive, to create a little more height or more focus, draw your eye to any particular place? And if y'all are happy with it,
Well, I'm all about the sauce, the pan sauce. I would have, drizzled a little bit over the meat. I would have. Just a little bit, kind of just, yeah, not
and then
much.
and then saying chef would remind you that I'm trying to break you from
I know.
everything with your brown gravy or white gravy. We want to break that habit.
I know.
Let me ask so let me restate my previous question, and as an attorney might do in court, let me lead the witness maybe just a little bit. Is there something different you could do with the green beans so that this plate doesn't look like the green beans are a side thought? This is a side dish, not sure what to do with it, needs to be on the plate, so I'm going to put a little bit of green bean off here to the side. Or in a classical Southern feeding a man meat and potatoes plating, you've got to have a little vegetable on the plate. So let me give you a couple of green beans off to the side. Is there a way that maybe we could incorporate the green beans exactly into with the risotto and the pork and the sauce? Could you do something different?
You
You could
could.
lay the green, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say you could lay the green beans over the pork, sort of diagonally diagonally across the pork from the corner toward the sauce.
Like right here,
Yes,
this way?
yes.
Okay.
Or the green beans could have been, you could put the meat on top of the green beans and kind of centered it, could have.
So taking the green beans at exactly where the risotto and the pork is plated, I could move the green beans underneath
Yeah,
and shingle the pork on top of it like that. Okay.
right.
Two good suggestions. What else? If there is any. Either one of those suggestions could have potentially created just a little more height. And I'm not going to say that one is better than the other. Again, there's just different concepts, different ways of approaching this. But to set the green beans, maybe about from the center of the plate above, then that would have created a lot of height. Both of those ideas. Okay, let's move on. Next victim or last victim.
I think that the risotto could have been a little more smoother around the edges. I'm thinking. Or maybe,
What you're saying, Sam, is it,
or maybe it almost looked a little too soupy. Maybe it should have been, I don't know. But those green beans are on point. And so is the pork loin. It looks really good. But I just think that the risotto should have had, I don't know, it just kind of looked, I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying it right, what I'm thinking.
What happened to the sauce?
say that again, Andy?
What happened to the sauce?
Maybe I don't want to call anybody out and ask him or her where the sauce is or anything like that. We can assume we don't see everything on the plate just with this one angle, and
Mhm.
that happens. Is there sauce underneath the whole thing? If that's the case, maybe there needs to be a little bit more sauce just so that it's visible. But you know, I don't know. Santa, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but this is we might call this a rustic, where I pulled the risotto out of the pan with a large spoon. And I don't want to say just plop it on the plate, but you know, that has its place, and it is a look. And so not everything has to be in ramekins formed, turned upside down, perfect pyramids and symmetrical and all of that. I'll ask the same question I asked with the last plate. Is there something that can be done with the green beans so that the green beans aren't just a secondary feature on the plate? Maybe this is intentional. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just wanting us to think of, are there alternative ways to elevate our plating?
I think maybe if the pork was turned the other direction and not be so linear and kind of, I don't know, placed more on top of the green beans and the risotto both, it may have been a little bit more effective.
So Kathy, you're saying maybe a little more kind of stacked, for lack of another way of putting it. Risotto, green bean, pork, or something like that. So it's all kind of together.
Or maybe the pork on top of both the risotto and the green beans, kind of in the middle of them.
Because this tenderloin appears to be long rather than round, are you saying turn it 90 degrees and shingle it from green bean? Very nice.
Maybe.
So that's my plate, everybody, and the risotto.
Create another direction.
Yeah, the risotto is actually under the green beans. You can't see it because I'm not very good with my camera. So that's supposed to be my sauce, is what the pork is sitting on. Just FYI.
All right.
And I think I should have.
Gotcha.
I think the sauce, like on one side, is too thick. On like it should have. I should have put the pork more in the middle of the sauce. I kind of had some trouble. It got, it was kind of, didn't maybe like reduce it enough or something, but that's just my thoughts.
Or, Christy, you may have reduced too much. Whoops. You may have reduced too much. And if you reduce too much and then start adding other components to the sauce, so depending on everything that's there, you know, some of you even said in your taste descriptions, you talked a little bit about your process of cooking as well as what you tasted. There's the presence of mustard. Mustard has a chemical. It's released when the mustard seed is broken. So in prepared mustard, this happens. In dry mustard, it happens even more. Mustard is an emulsifier. So if your sauce has some opposing liquid, like you've got some butter, you've got a little bit of fat, and you have some wine, for example, those kind of oppose each other. Mustard is an emulsifier. That's going to bring stuff together. The more you work something that includes an emulsifier, the tighter your emulsion becomes. And so even if this is a sauce that doesn't have a flour roux in it at all, it could still be an emulsion. And the more it's cooked and the more it's stirred and worked, the tighter the emulsion becomes. That's all mayonnaise is. It's done really fast in a blender, but if you do it just in a bowl with a fork, the same thing will happen. It's just, it happens over time. Sauces, we do a sauce with every plate. Each week there'll be some kind of a sauce. This week's sauce is going to be different than what you think of as a traditional sauce. And San will be happy because you're going to put it on top of your meat. And so it's going to fit just right. But your sauces, when you take stock soups and sauces, the class, that's really where you're going to perfect your sauces. We don't spend any time in this class. So I have you make sauces, and we haven't really learned how to make sauces yet. And so, you know, every single class we take, there's always a component of, well, I wish this other class was a prerequisite, and I wish that other class was a prerequisite. And the bottom line is, we can't have every class be a prerequisite of every class. Then that's a vicious cycle. Anybody else have anything else they would want to add about this plate? I really like that idea of turning the pork, this very pork, because it's oblong, and shingling it from green bean to bottom of the sauce. There you go. Terrence, question, ask away, my friend. If you're talking, you've got to unmute. We can't hear you. You're still muted. If you have audio issues, Terrence, just type your question or comment in the chat. I'll leave the picture up for another few seconds, give you a chance in case you're asking something relative to this. All right, let's drive on. And if a question comes in, then we can backtrack a little bit. Let's talk a little about this week that's coming up. Okay, some of you are kind of joked with San a little bit last week about You know, if the school opened up at 5 o'clock in the morning, she would be waiting out at the gate at 4:30 or 4:15 to pick up her product and have everything done and submitted by, I don't know, about 5:30 in the morning and be done and done. That's fine. I'm glad that we get all of our product, but we can kind of wait until this evening and ask questions and talk about what the week is going to look like. Now, I'm going to give you an alternative. I'm going to give you an alternative at the end here, because certainly working at home, not everyone has a charcoal grill, a gas grill. Yes, Andy, please go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt. So the recipes were for chicken breast
For this,
for this week. Unless I'm on the wrong week.
nope. Okay, here's where some comment that I've said a few times. This week is where maybe it's going to be the proving ground. It's going to be the big test. Okay. I tried to find, if I can remember the recipe that's up. I tried to find, number one, I try to give you recipes that are already in our textbook, because you paid a truckload of money for that textbook. And maybe I could be telling a fib right now. It won't be my first, and I'm sure it won't be my last. But either, do you have that recipe printed, Andy?
Yes, so it was grilled chicken breast with red pepper butter.
Okay. Yes, there are two aspects of that recipe that is the reason why I gave you that recipe, and I didn't give you a recipe for grilled ribeye. Okay. Number one, it's really the only recipe in the textbook that is fairly clear about the process of grilling. And so I want you to pay attention to the directions for grilling, not so much the recipe. Remember, this class, this semester is not, there'll be a couple of times, and I'll tell you in advance, it's already written in some of our labs in the future. I want you to follow this recipe. Do what this recipe says. When we stew, when we braise and stew later in the semester, you're going to do a French dish and you're going to do a Brazilian dish, and they incorporate the methods, but they're very specific dishes. And I want you to follow the recipes. And one of the things that we will have a conversation about the week following will be how each of you follow exactly the same recipe, and we end up with different stuff. And we'll talk about how and why. Short of that, I'm giving you recipes that primarily I want us to focus on the method. So kind of what's in the directions, not are we grilling chicken? Are we grilling fish? Are we grilling beef? Are we grilling lamb? Blah, blah, blah. Secondly, for our textbook, this is the only recipe that has compound butter. And again, it is not about the recipe, that specific recipe for compound butter. You should have picked up for this week's lab, San, I'll ask you, since you already picked up product, you should have picked up at least one or two whole sticks of butter. Do you recall you got 2 sticks of butter?
Yeah, 2 sticks.
One of those sticks of butter is for you to make your own compound butter. You're going to flavor it, season it any old way you want to season it. It doesn't have to be this red pepper butter, which is amazing on chicken. It's good on the steak. It's good on ribeye. But if you want to jot this down while we're on the subject, I'll use dry herbs for this. I like just a little hint of rosemary, a pretty good. So to 1 stick of butter, I'll probably use maybe a teaspoon of dry rosemary, and I'm going to pour it in my hand first. And in the cup of my hand, I use my fingertips to crumble it, crush it. And I just do it by hand. I want to break it up a little bit finer, but I don't necessarily need it to be dust. I'm going to use about maybe 2 teaspoons of thyme. Depending on the size, one, if it's really big, maybe a half of a shallot. One medium, small to medium sized shallot, about half of a really big shallot. Average size cloves of garlic, the cloves that you're familiar with that we use at the school. Maybe 2 or 3 cloves of garlic. I kind of like garlic. The shallots and the garlic need to be really finely minced. I will tell you, practice your knife skills, but I'll also tell you in full disclosure and complete transparency, so you can learn from me what I do when I'm not being evaluated and nobody's watching. I just put all that stuff in a food processor. And so I'll put a shallot and I'll put the garlic and I'll spin it in the food processor until it's really fine. Then I'll drop in the herbs and I'll drop in room temperature butter.
Right.
And just pulse it till it's really smooth. And there's a video for this week on the compound butter.
Right.
So watch that video and compare that video with the directions for the compound butter in your chicken recipe, and you should be good to go for making your own compound butter. And when you put that butter, right, just a little slab of it, you'll make the compound butter, you'll roll it up in the plastic wrap the way the video shows you, pop it in the fridge while you're doing all your other cooking. It'll harden up, it'll tighten up a little bit. If you put it in the freezer, it might harden a little too much. But you want it cold-ish. Then you slice off a good plug and put it right on the steak, fresh off the grill, and that's going to melt all everywhere. Salt and pepper your butter according to your taste. If you're using unsalted butter, which you are from the school, but for future reference, if you're using unsalted butter, you have control of the butter. If you buy salted butter, you really don't know how much salt is in the butter, and you don't have as much control. I'm a control freak. For me, it's just as much about control and how much is going to overdo my palate, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. The compound butter is going to be your sauce for the week. And if you want to make that first and use a little of the compound butter with your fingerling potatoes, I know San already made the face. That's going to be good eats. When it's really good, I say slap your mama and stand in line, but I hope nobody slaps their mama. That's bad news bears. If you do have a charcoal grill, notice this grill is lit. The charcoal is lit. And there's a lot of flame. This is not the time that you're ready to cook on the charcoal grill. Just in case nobody has, you have a charcoal grill, but you're not the one that grills, or you don't have a whole lot of experience using the grill. If you have a gas grill, maybe disregard what I'm saying here for just a minute. But this is good knowledge for all of us anyway, whether you're using charcoal, whether you build a campfire in your backyard and you cook on wood. It is less about the flame doing the cooking. Okay. With the flame, the charcoal is lit, the charcoal is burning. Now my charcoal is ready for cooking. You need to see red glow everywhere, and the surface of every briquette is going to be white, not quite ashy yet. If it's cooked down so far that you blow on the top of your grill and a bunch of ash flies off, you let it burn down maybe a little too far, and it is now on the side of cooling. But white hot and glowing red hot, that's what we want for grilling. And so while this is going on, all of the flame is going on, I want to make sure the grill grate is cleaned off really well. I probably want to spray it with some cooking spray. And then I want to put the grates over the fire and let those grates heat up as well. That's where those grill marks are going to come from. The grill marks are beautiful. The grill marks are really, really attractive. The grill marks come from super hot grill grates, but that is also the Maillard reaction happening. Those marks are flavor. We kind of beat up just a little bit without having a whole physics class. We did kind of beat up what the Maillard reaction is when we talked about searing. You're going to do the same thing on the grill. Now, you don't sear everything, all of these spaces in between the metal grates. That's not necessarily searing the meat. The real sear happens where the meat is in contact with the metal. But those marks are beautiful flavor. Now, offline, if we want to have a debate or if we want to have a conversation about, especially on a charcoal grill, that's supposed to cause cancer and all of those kinds of things. The only real response I have to that, and I don't want to belittle those kind of comments, but, living causes cancer and we're all going to die from living anyway. Just enjoy a nice grilled steak and it's going to be okay. I wrote a paper. I need to hand this off to our healthy foods and nutrition teacher. Broccoli does contain a compound that is a known carcinogenic. It happens naturally in the broccoli. I have proven definitively that broccoli causes cancer. Now, are y'all listening to me? Literally, I'm not exaggerating. You have to eat more than 2 tons of broccoli in one sitting to reach a toxic level that would even start that process. And so you would eat yourself to death. It won't happen. That's not 2 tons over a lifetime. You have to, because you expel that compound, your body doesn't use it. It doesn't store it. I don't remember what it is. I'd have to go and look. If you're interested, send me an email and I'll try to find that. But I mean, living today is going to kill us anyway. So grill your ribeye and just enjoy it. Just don't grill every single day, all the rest of your life. What else do we say? Kind of goes without saying, If you want to make those nice grill marks, don't, and for some of you, even on a grill, this may be the first time and you only got one steak. This is the first time some of you may be doing this. And so if it doesn't work exactly right the first time, that's okay. It took me more than 1 or 2 eggs to learn how to flip eggs in an omelet pan, to flip an omelet, to flip fried eggs and not break the yolk. It's okay if we don't get this 100%, especially on the outside surface. But your part of your lab for this week, here's the real challenge, aside from all of our plating and things that we're already doing. Your challenge is to grill a medium rare steak. What you put on your plate, we need to try to reach medium rare. How to get those hash marks, those crisscross marks. Really, first of all, your grill should be at a temperature that you can hear psst when the grill touches when the steak touches the grill. And you're going to put the steak one way. After, a minute and a half or so, maybe 2 minutes, you're going to turn the steak, leaving it on the same side. You're going to rotate the steak about 45 degrees. And that's where those hash marks are going to come. And you continue to cook the steak on that same side. Flip it over, repeat the same process, and you've got hash marks on both sides. How do you tell the doneness of the steak? How long does the steak need to be on the grill? That is the age-old question. That is one of the things you're learning to do by experience. We learned, do y'all remember this method? That muscle at the base of your thumb, your hand relaxed is rare, and not pinching, but just touching the tip of your finger and the tip of your thumb, feeling that muscle, that is medium rare. Your long finger, that's medium. Your ring finger is medium well. Your pinky is well done. You want your steak to come off right on that bridge between rare and medium rare. Put the butter on it while the butter is melting, while in the laws of thermodynamics, as anything cools, 2 things are going on with the heat. 2 things are going on at the same time. Surface heat is being given off, and that's what's going to melt the butter. Internal heat is being drawn into the core, and that is how and why anything that we, especially meats, for the first 5 to 7 minutes after it's come off the pan, out of the oven, off the grill, the first 5 to 7 minutes, the internal temperature is rising, even though it's not on the heat anymore, because the heat is being pushed into the core until it's kind of dissipated. And so your internal temperature will rise 5 to 7 degrees. And in most cases, that is the next degree of doneness. So if you take your steak off the grill medium rare, by the time your butter's melted, by the time you cut it, slice it, shape it, form it, and put it on your plate for presentation, it's medium or it's medium well. And our challenge every day is being sure that that customer that orders medium rare gets the medium rare steak when that steak is placed right in front of them, however long it lasts, from grill to rest to plate to the pass where the servers get it to deliver it to the table. That could be 10 or 12 minutes. Chefs get really mad if it's 10 to 12 minutes, but still. If you want to use your thermometer and go with the thermometer, here's a chart for especially your steaks. The temperature ranges. This is primarily beef. These are your temperature ranges for the varying degrees of doneness. And as I've done in the past, when I'm done with this tonight, I'll post the PowerPoint itself. I'll post this in Blackboard, so you can go back and pull individual slides or whatever you want. Don't feel like you got to copy all this or jot this down really fast. But you want your finished rested steak internal temperature to be around 130 to 135. If you're going by temperature method versus the feel texture method. Okay. I've already talked about this. This was where I would spend time talking about compound butter. Compound butter is so versatile. You can add, depending on what you're making compound butter for, you can add fruits. You can add something a little fruity and a little heat at the same time. As unusual as this might sound, a little bit of raspberry, a hint of raspberry and chipotle, and put that over some chicken. I mean, you know, and you as a foodie, I know we're not quite at the time of year, unless you're a real planner, not quite at the time of year where you're planning Christmas gifts. But if your circle of friends kind of expect from you a foodie gift because you're a foodie, or you're a foodie and you have within your family and circle of friends some other known foodies, your own compound butters would make an inexpensive but heartfelt, handmade with your love, make a really, really great Christmas gift. Sweet, savory. Just think of anything that you use butter for, and you can make a compound butter. And one of you are going to take this idea, one or two or whatever, and I don't know, 3 years from now, San Anderson's butter is going to be in every grocery store in Arkansas, and in 5 years there'll be a contract with Walmart, and it'll be global. And as creative as you can be, compound butter, the possibilities are truly endless with the combinations of, chives, no chives, shallot, onion, white onion, yellow onion, red onion, Vidalia onion, ultra sweet, garlic, no garlic, a little wine, red wine, white wine, be more specific, any herb that grows on the planet, fruits, spices, a holiday compound butter with just a little bit of brown sugar, some cinnamon, a kiss, just a little peck of clove, maybe a little allspice. Yeah. And then use that butter to saute some butternut squash. Yeah, you're welcome. Merry Christmas from Chef to you. As I've said already, the intention this week is grill your steak, nice medium rare. The key is going to be, don't cut your compound butter too thick so that you get some that melts and some that just stays on the steak. but don't cut it so thin that it's gone. You want enough on the steak that as it melts, you get some coverage over the whole steak. So if you were to use the entire ribeye, just to tell you what I do, and I do this at home. Well, I say often. Ribeye is pretty pricey, and so don't grill ribeye all that often. But when I do, I usually cut 2 rounds of the compound butter, and I cut them half an inch is maybe 3/8 if you're going to be exactly, measuring by a ruler or something like that. I go a quarter, a little bit larger than a quarter of an inch, and I do 2 plugs on both sides of the steak and just let it melt away. And the flavor it imparts. Remember, one of the things that gives us flavor is the Maillard reaction. Another thing that gives flavor is fat. And that's all butter is. And you're putting that on top of ribeye that is marbled with fat, that has a little bit of exterior fat. Do you include it? Do you not include it? Depends on how much fat there is and what it is you want to do for your plating. Here's a few examples of some common, I guess, compound butters. Some garlic, some yellow Spanish onion, and I know you can find it at Whole Foods. Dry porcini mushrooms. Dry. Pulse that in your food processor till you get some smaller chunks, and even with a little bit of the powder that it's going to create, put that in some butter, some porcini, garlic, a little onion, salt and pepper, and just have that on hand that you can toss with some pasta. Just you boil some pasta and you just want to eat something terrible for you, but quick and tasty. That kind of compound butter, toss the pasta, sprinkle on a little Parmesan cheese. I know, delicious. Lime and ancho chili, lime and chipotle chili with a little garlic. If you do that, call me. And yeah, I would join in that. Not going to spend really any time on this. We did kind of talk about blanching. Haven't we talked about blanching? We've done blanching already. Season hot water. Don't cook it all the way. A green bean, for example, just cook it to the point of some flexibility. Immediately drop it in ice. The ice bath is really important. The time that the vegetable is in the boil is important. Don't overdo this. Blanch is usually followed by another quick cook method. On the grill, saute, quick roast. If y'all remember some of your equipment terms from Food One, a lot of commercial kitchens are equipped with salamanders. And so a salamander is that kind of top heat. It's a single unit that is its own broiler. And it's kind of always on. And throwing something on a little plate, these metal plates that we use to finish something off in a salamander, that's a common thing. You get it at the table and it looks and feels and tastes like, your asparagus seems like it's been roasted. And it seems like it's been roasted in the oven for a half an hour, 40 minutes. And it was really blanched for 5 and finished in the salamander for maybe another 5. But your guest thinks you were a magician. You magically created something that should have taken you almost an hour to do. And I just placed the order, and my plate, it's fresh and it's hot, and it still has crunch, but it's crispy on the outside. I guarantee those green beans, that asparagus was blanched and then broiled in the salamander. Just a little, I don't know. Can you see the movement? Are you able to watch that? Okay, good. It translates over. I only picked this picture, as dumb as it may sound, because I like that movement, and I don't know. That's all I have to say about this picture. I'm not going to beat up blanching anymore. Oh, this is an image. Disregard this last little picture right here. Those one in the bottom right corner, because we're not talking about dehydrating. But if you do get into dehydration for food preservation, for a lot of your produce, a lot of your vegetables, you want to blanch them before you dehydrate them. And so anyway, there you go. Let's talk just a minute about fingerling potatoes. There are many different varieties. There are different colors. In this picture, there are many different potatoes, different than fingerling potatoes. Fingerling potatoes, contrary to popular belief, are their own kind of potato. Fingerlings aren't special baby potatoes. They're not baby Yukon Gold potatoes. You may have Yukon fingerling potatoes. Okay. And because of the rarity compared to other standard potatoes and the cost of them, these are not the potatoes we use for mashed potatoes. So in your lab this week, unless you've already done this, in your lab this week, please don't make mashed potatoes with these fingerling potatoes. To cut these down into little bitty rondelles, I would consider that a little bit of a waste, unless that's a specific design, a specific plating concept you're after. Fingerling potatoes are usually whole or some version of almost whole. You may cut a fingerling potato lengthwise in half. That's a classical use of a fingerling potato. You may use a fingerling potato and cut it in the middle on the bias. If you don't remember what that means, then go back to your Food One notes and stuff and look that up. And so I'm not telling you, I don't want to limit your creativity, but just know, please don't use these potatoes for mashed potatoes. That'll make me cry. And I am pretty sensitive about the fingerling potatoes. Very labor intensive. Certainly a potential use of fingerlings. We see this more with smaller traditional potatoes. But if you've never seen anything like this before, this is a Hasselback potato. You might put wooden dowels on either side of the potato to kind of hold it in place to keep it from rocking, and use your knife to cut those slits. But you're gonna cut the layers only as far down as your knife will go, stopped by the wooden dowels. As you roast it, a lot of butter, Parmesan cheese, maybe. It'll open up as it roasts. And so again, the Maillard reaction is the caramelization and the little crust that happens on the outside. It's really interesting, and it tastes amazing, and it's very labor intensive. But I just offered that as a creative idea. If you do not have a grill, if you do not have a grill, if you have a grill but you're apprehensive about using the grill, I would ask you to get over it and give it a try. If you do not have a grill, just like we did last week with the sous vide, I'm not asking you to go to Walmart and go buy you a charcoal grill. Then you got to assemble it and you got to buy the charcoal and, blah, blah, blah. Feel free to broil. Use the broiler of your oven. And later on this week, I don't recall, I think it's Wednesday or Thursday. The high for Central Arkansas is like mid 70s. So maybe this weekend or later on in the week, if you don't have a grill and you're going to use your broiler, you don't want to heat up your house today. I don't know about you. I've been watching San on and off fan herself. It's pretty warm and it's really humid and kind of sticky. If you want to wait till later on in the week before you heat up your house, because broiling ought to heat up your oven to about 450 or higher. Okay. Broiling is top heat. Broiling will create the Maillard reaction on the surface of your meat, on your ribeye steak. And so that is an alternative that I'll accept. Again, just like last week, pulled from Google Images from the interwebs, just a couple of additional plate presentation, not necessarily ideas, but as we go forward, one thing, this is actually pork. This is not a piece of steak, but listen, when it comes to your plate presentations this week, I may repeat this in preparation for your final practical exam at the end of the semester. But just because you have an entire, 14 to 20 ounce ribeye steak. I don't know how big all the steaks are. They were cut last week in the in-person meat and seafood class. You don't have to present the entire steak on your plate. You don't even have to cook the entire steak. We're influenced by our experiences. You don't have to be, Texas Roadhouse. You don't have to be Colton's Steakhouse, or I think most of us in this class can remember Bonanza and Sizzler. You don't have to be that kind of steakhouse and slop this whole half of cow on a plate. That is appropriate for really lower end casual dining restaurants. I want us to be thinking fine dining. Take ribeye and put it in fine dining plating. If you're looking for pictures and images to give you inspiration, one or two of you left notes with this past week's lab work. And when you did your sketch, your drawing, you went out online to look for inspiration. That's great. That's great. I sometimes do that as well. And when I do, for high-end plating, I usually Google. So in this case, I would Google ribeye steak Michelin star chef or Michelin star presentation. Ribeye steak Michelin star. Michelin, like the tires. Good. That's the company. That's the organization that gives those Michelin stars. I look for that. Ribeye, steak, Michelin star, and then you're going to get really great, really magnificent high-end plate presentations. Mixed in there is going to be some, Bubba Jones that hold my beer and watch this. Slops his ribeye on the plate, kind of stuff. Piles it with French fries. Okay. Another idea. Look at how clean this is. This is not a steak. This is the marrow out of the bone. Delicious if you've never had it. A little different kind of texture, but wonderful. Look at how clean this is. Look at how attractive but random this is. Random is good. Rustic is good. In all of these cases, the plates are clean. And the negative space and cleanliness of the plate draws your eye to the center of the plate, the highest point in the plate, the thing that is the biggest pop of color on the plate. All of those things draw your eye, and that's kind of what we're about. Questions, complaints, criticisms? What do you think? What do you want to know more about? Bueller? You've got your marching orders. I think you can, hopefully you tell the recipes that I give you are intended to be specifically vague. Can I put it that way? There are specifics in recipes. I want the recipes to kind of be perceived vague. Pay attention to the narrative. Pay attention to the directions and the methods, not, okay, you need to use 2 teaspoons of this and a pound of that and blah, blah, blah. That's not at all for this entire class. That is not at all the intention of the recipes, except for the couple of times that it will be, and I'll tell you when we get there. Terrence?
Hey, I had a question about the about earlier beginning class. We talked about the mise en place, and like far as the proper technique, like like just dealing with like the raw meat in general. So if you have it, you have a piece of meat on a cutting board, and if you have like all of your ingredients in separate, containers or bowls or whatever the case might be, just to be clear, is that like a no-no in the culinary industry?
So again, I'm asking for a mise en place picture, and we're all staging one picture. And sometimes there's a whole lot of stuff and we're trying to put it all in one picture. And I don't know, because of what we see in YouTube and Pinterest and Facebook and what we see on Food Network and Cooking Channel, it's just, that's one thing kind of ingrained in us. Let's put everything on the cutting board and put that cutting board in the frame of the picture. Okay. I'm just expressing, number one, best practice is what we learned over and over in Food 1. The only thing that goes on the cutting board is the one thing you're working on. And we don't typically have the little bowls and stuff like that. For our mise en place picture, I'm perfectly okay with the individual vessels resting on the cutting board that shows you've done all of your weighing and measuring and cutting, except when you have your raw protein on the board and you have other raw product, produce, whatever, also on the same board and they're not in different vessels, then the chance of cross-contamination is higher. And I just want to be extra sure that we are learning to be extra vigilant. So, for example, a better approach. I think, I don't normally call everybody out, but I don't have the picture in front of me, and I'll go ahead and cheerlead for what I think was a pretty good example of what I was talking about. And if you're okay with this, I can toss this picture in with this PowerPoint and put it up. But Andy had his pork tenderloin, trimmed raw pork tenderloin, already seasoned, on a separate, smaller cutting board on the corner of the larger cutting board that had all of the rest of the meats. Did I get that right? Andy, was that yours?
Yes.
I think it was a white cutting board and you had a yellow cutting board underneath that. So
Yes.
the example there was, okay, the pork tenderloin was raw, was exposed, was on the board, but it was on its own board. Nothing else was on it or around it. And just for the sake of the picture, that board was placed just on the corner of the larger cutting board that had everything else, in its own little bowls and cups and vessels and measuring cups and things like that. That is best practice. And I'm gonna push more and more for best practice, because when you get to food 3, let me promise you, you'll get to know Chef Rogers really, really well. And there are some things when you get in the commercial kitchen and are actually cooking for the public, there are some things that I'm expressing to you is best practice that in the working kitchen is the only practice. And so let's be really vigilant. Terrence, did I answer your question, or did I end up going off on left field and end up in a rabbit and not get your question?
Kind of both for the most part. I mean, also you kind of touched around the answer. Well, you was giving the definitely the professional standpoint, of that. But far as for this class, no, that what I was referring to.
For this
But
class,
I meant, mhm.
for this class, and what I've expressed as a professional kitchen should be the same. Hopefully, I'm not giving you two different messages. Okay. Raw protein, raw anything else on the same board is a no-no. Blanket rule. When we do these pictures for our mise en place, I understand that we're staging a picture, but even in that picture, you need to live that law. You need to live that rule, and it needs to show in that mise en place picture. So that raw protein needs to be in a separate little dish with all the other things in other dishes. That would be my number one suggestion, just to be ultra safe. Everything for that mise en place picture is weighed, measured, trimmed, cut, prepared, ready for cooking, all in their own individual vessels, protein included. in a few weeks, just a few weeks, we're going to be dealing with seafood, and there are some bacteria and some toxins with seafood that not to use a scare tactic. We're getting enough of that from the government right now. There are some bacteria, there are some toxins in some seafood that can just about, will kill people. I'm talking about the ultra immunocompromised, really elderly, really sick, all of us in this class, we may eat some of this seafood prepared the wrong way, not held under right conditions, or we cross-contaminate things with seafood cooties. And, by the weekend, you got a holy cow case of the trots and you're not sure how you got it. Well, that's why you let the grouper cook group up on your broccoli, and that ended up in your gut, and your gut didn't like it. And so I guess for clarification, everything, protein included, in its own vessel. Each thing in their own vessels for the Mies pictures.
Gotcha.
Sam?
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Good. San?
I need to actually speak to you after this class about meat and seafood because I'll be gone.
Great. Yes.
Okay.
I got 7:00. Oh, I just flipped over to 7:01. Unless anybody has anything else. I thought I heard a voice.
Nope, I have no questions this week. Can you believe it?
I almost can't believe it, but I'm glad. but I'm sad at the same time. We like questions and all of that. Everyone, please have a wonderful night. Have a blessed week. Enjoy ribeye.
I'm so excited.
Terrible class. Ribeye that's covered with compound butter, and Christmas gifts for all of your loved ones of compound butter.
Thank you, Chef.
Thank
99
you.
99
Bye.
to one
Have
and
a
all.
good evening.
All right, take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Stand by just a second. Okay, hold on just a second, Sam, because I'm still recording. So I'm going to go ahead and